class. In this lecture, I want to talk to you about Sir Walter Raleigh and Christopher Marlowe, Pastoral and Renaissance poetry. If you'll go in your book to page 264, there's a term there that you need to be really familiar with, and it is pastoral. Pastoral is something that celebrates country life. It dates back to ancient Greece, but this idea really takes flight during the English Renaissance. And it may have something to do with the fact that England, particularly London, was a dirty, crowded, kind of nasty place. And so there was this longing that people had for the countryside. If you look on page 265, whenever we talk about Marlowe and Raleigh, this is who we're talking about. Christopher Marlowe, he died really, really young. Um, and there's a lot of speculation about his death. He died from being knifed to death in a tavern fight. There are some historians that think that the reason he died is because he was an undercover agent, and that's why he died. We don't really know for sure. We do know that he lived a very short life, much too short. He would have definitely ended up being one of our greatest English writers if he would have just had more time. And we have over here on the other side the great Sir Walter Raleigh. Now, Sir Walter Raleigh was born from came from a wealthy family. He was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth. He did end up falling out of favor, though, because he had an affair with one of the ladies in the court of Queen Elizabeth. Now, the ladies' maids of Queen Elizabeth were not permitted to marry. It was a way to ensure that they were always at her beck and call. Well, Sir Walter Raleigh broke that rule and married one without the Queen's permission. And it made the Queen incredibly angry. So she put him in prison. He eventually was able to get out after James I became king. But then James I had him go on a mission to go uh, find land or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was to find gold. But he was given very strict instructions from King James not to have any sort of skirmish with the Spanish. Well, he did, um, because the Spanish, they got in a skirmish and the Spanish killed his son. And so Raleigh lost it and went and decimated them, which, of course, as a human, we can understand why he did that. But it ended up, in the end, costing him his own life because when he returned to England, James I was very angry that Raleigh would dare to have, done something that he told him specifically not to do. And so Raleigh ended up dying because of it. Now, he's a very clever man. He's what we would consider the quintessential Renaissance man. Okay, he was good at everything pretty much, and in fact, some of the things that he's written as far as the history of the world during this time period. He wrote a book called History of the World. It is still regarded as a great piece of nonfiction text from the Renaissance. Okay, go ahead and look at page 266 in your text. And you'll see we have a poem here called The Passionate Shepherd to His Love. And then we have the nymph's reply to the shepherd. One of the things that you need to understand before we even read these poems is that Raleigh was mocking or trolling Marlowe. Okay? The two poems are very very important because they relate in content, they relate in form. Each of them has 6 stanzas. Each of them are in quatrains, which means 4 lines. Each of them have the rhyme scheme AABB. They're both in iambic tetrameter, which means they have 4 iambs in each line. And so the reason why that's important is because Raleigh was intentionally trying to make fun, trying to make a point with Marlowe. Marlowe was so young and so idealistic, and Raleigh was kind of putting him in his place. So it's really the equivalent of what we have today. Whenever we have rap battles, we have one rapper who, throws shade at the other, and then the other one claps back on his album. It's the same sort of idea. That's not a new idea. That's something that was occurring way back, in 1599 and 1600. So let's look first at the passionate shepherd to his love. So if you'll look at the very beginning, you can see it says, "Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove, that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods, or steepy mountain yields. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks, by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals." And so what he's saying here is, hey, come with me to the countryside, and where we go there, you'll see proved all the pleasures of the world. And that melodious birds sing madrigals is so funny, because what he's really saying there, is he's saying, and birds will even sing songs for us and four-part harmony. So we have this pastoral or idyllic image, this very perfect utopian countryside. You can see here, we'll sit upon the rock, seeing the shepherd feed their flocks. What you know about 16th century, you know this is way too good to be true. And if you're someone who has ever gone out into the countryside and just sat on a rock for a while, you'll know that there are bugs there. And the sun will shine down too hot, and you will end up with a sunburn sometimes. And shallow rivers, if you walk across the rocks next to a river, you're going to slip and fall sometimes. That's just life. But none of that is included in Marley's poem, because really he's just giving this perfect ideal world where he and his lover will be together. And we will see the shepherds feed their flocks. Shepherds there is capitalized, and this is something that we see a lot in the time of the Renaissance, this idea of a shepherd and a sheep. And of course, we see it even in King James Version of the Bible, talking about shepherd and sheep, of this pastoral, idyllic place. And of course, that's an example of alliteration. Feed their flocks, seeing the shepherds. And then he says, "I will make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap and flowers and a kirtle embroidered with leaves of myrtle." So what he's saying there, he's implying a very physical relationship that he wants to have with this girl. "I'll make thee a bed of roses, 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers, and a kirtle." A kirtle, if you look at your footnote there, that's a skirt. So he's going to make her a skirt of leaves, a cap of flowers, and he's going to lay her down on a bed of flowers. Okay, so it's pretty clear he is trying to get some. Okay, he's trying to get this physical relationship with this girl. There's this floral, natural bedclothes that he's going to make. This might even be a little bit of an allusion to the Garden of Eden, back to this place of perfection where it doesn't matter if we're naked, because we are unashamed of that. And then he goes on to say, "A gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold." Now, what we see here, this is a riff on what in literature we call a blason. You'll want to write that down if you don't already know that term. A blason, what that is, it's a poetic device that describes a lover's body, and they typically start with the hair, the eyes. They talk about the lips, then they talk about the breasts and the rest of her body, whatever she's wearing. At one point during the Renaissance, it kind of seemed like all of the men were writing about the same girl. She always had raven dark hair. She always had mesmerizing eyes, dark red lips, creamy pale skin, and she was very buxom and had big boobs. That was like the ideal Renaissance woman. And so we have that blason where they would always, describe her going down. And he kind of does a little riff on this here. And that's why Marlowe is really kind of unique and special. And then he goes on to say, "A belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be thy be my love. And you can see here, promises feel a little bit too good to be true. He's going to give her coral clasps and amber studs. So the buttons that he makes her out of, the clothes he's going to make her, all from nature. Yeah, it's a little too good to be true. Um, we have these very physically charged words, this repetition of this refrain that make us see maybe even a little desperation. Come, come, live with me. Come, be my love. Very physically charged poem. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. And now shepherd swains are the young boys, and they are going to come and they are going to sing songs and dance for her. And this, that you might have just looked right over, but this is actually a pretty significant thing here at the bottom where it says, for thy delight each May morning. May Day is a day that was celebrated, and it is still even celebrated in some places of Europe, and it's the beginning of spring, and it's a time to do what you want. And so for him to say each May morning, he might as well have been propositioning her. It was very clear what he was hoping to get from this young girl. And then he says, if these delights my mind may move, then come live with me and be thy love. So you can see this is along the theme, and we see this a lot in Renaissance poetry, which is carpe diem, seize the day. We have this moment to live. You have to remember the people that are writing this, they are the children, they are the grandchildren of those that died in the bubonic plague. And maybe that's part of the reason why they have this attitude of, we have to make this moment matter. This is all we have. And so we can see that definitely resonate in this poem. Now, if you'll turn the page, you'll see Raleigh's reply. And you can see in his reply that he was very familiar with Marlowe's poem. Marlowe's poem was very, very popular. It would be like our equivalent of going viral. Okay, it was an extremely popular poem. And he is clapping back at that poem. And he says, and the nymph's reply to the shepherd. So if you just put that in context, the nymph's reply, a nymph is like a fairy almost. It's a young, beautiful woodland creature. Okay, beautiful, and often they are very independent. Okay, and so she's talking back to the shepherd, and she says, "If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue." So we have this initial hypothetical here about the nymph's answer, saying, if the world was young, if love was young, if every shepherd was truthful, if that were a possibility, which of course is not a possibility. The earth, even in the Renaissance age, they knew the earth was very old, and they knew that love was very old, and that young boys will lie, much like they do today. Teenage boys will lie in order to get a girl to do things for him. Okay, and so it's not a new idea. And so, since those things are obviously not true, what she's saying to him is, no, I will not be your love. She says, these pretty pleasures might me move to live with thee and be thy love, if all of those things are true, but they're not. And what she does here is, what Raleigh is doing here is he's using the exact same iambic tetrameter, okay, that pattern of unstressed, stressed syllable. And then you have the four stanzas. It's very much in the same style. And then, if you didn't notice it as we were reading, you have the pretty pleasures might me move. Christopher Marlowe got a lot of wonderful press for his ability to use the alliteration. And so Raleigh kind of goes overboard with the alliteration in order to show that he could also do it. Okay, anything you can do, I can do better. Sort of the same sort of idea here. Time drives the flocks from field to fold when rivers rage and rocks grow cold. So he's breaking down each part of the argument. Seasons change. You can't lay a girl down. You can't lay me down in roses because I will get cold outside. It doesn't make sense to sit around on rocks next to a river. We're going to fall in because rivers rage. Rocks are cold. They're hard. It's not a soft place for us to hang out. Okay, so she's the nymph here is replying back that no, all of the things, the ways that you want to spend our time together doesn't really sound that fun. And you have here Philomel. Philomel becometh dumb. Now, Philomel means a nightingale, and dumb means he's not able to talk anymore, not able to speak anymore. So what he's saying here is Philomel becometh dumb. He's not able to, birds will no longer be able to sing. And this is an allusion back to Greek mythology in which there is a character who turns into a bird. So we have an allusion, a pun, and a symbol here all in one. Okay. And then the rest complains of cares to come. Again, you notice how rivers rage, rocks, cares to come, flocks, field, fold. You see how Raleigh's really going overboard with the alliteration. Okay. The flowers do fade and wanton fields to wayward winter reckoning yields. So he's pointing out again, flowers, you lay me down in flowers, it's going to get cold, they're going to die. It's not a reasonable place for us to make our home together outside. Okay. Because wayward winter reckoning yields, meaning that spring will end. And at some point, I'm going to want to stay warm. So maybe you want to provide more for me than a bed of roses. Okay. A honey tongue, a heart of gall is fancy's spring, but sorrow's fall. And what this means here is really a life lesson I hope you can hold on to. As smooth words will lead to brazen actions, will lead to you making quick actions that seem great in the moment, but then regret them later. You see, people are essentially the same as they have always been. A honey tongue brings a heart of gall. It's fancy spring, but sorrows fall. In the end, you'll regret that decision. And then the nymph goes on to sort of make fun of all the clothing. Remember, the shepherd was going to use all the wool to clothe her. Thy gowns, thy shoes, thy bed of roses, thy cap, thy kirtle, and thy posies soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten, in folly ripe, in reason rotten. So with that seductive blazon starting at the top, going down, the nymph goes back to say, hey, all of that you are promising me, even if you were going to give it to me, which I don't think you would, but even if you would, it's not going to last. Okay? It's folly ripe and reason rotten. It's not a way for us to really spend our life. Okay? And we have posies. Okay, thy posies. Posies is another word, another term for poem. So we have that double meaning there. Okay, then she goes on to say, thy belt of straw and ivy buds, thy coral clasps and amber studs, all these in me no means can move to come to thee and be thy love. This is where she flat out rejects him. Hey, saying it doesn't matter how fancy your gifts are, how beautiful the buttons are that you make for this outfit that you expect me to wear, weirdo, but I'm not wearing it because I'm not that into you. Okay, and because you're a foolish guy who wants to lay me out in a field. So thanks, but no thanks. And then we have the last stanza, which really brings it home and says, but could youth last and love still breed, had joy no date, nor age no need, then these delights my mind might move to live with thee and be thy love. In other words, in a perfect world where spring lasts forever, where we were always young, where joy doesn't end, where I have no need to stay warm because I'm always warm, well, maybe in that perfect, beautiful world, we could be together. Otherwise, no, we can't. And so that's basically what he's saying here. And so you can see this theme of carpe diem, it's turned upside down. Since time flies, we will not seize the day. So in Christopher Marlowe's, he's saying, we have just this moment. So come with me. Let's go. Let's get it on. And in the reply to the shepherd, it's sort of flipping on the head, saying, we don't have much time, so I'm not going to waste time. Okay, we don't live in Eden. We have this fallen world we're trying to deal with, and so no, just not that interested. So I wish I was with you so I could ask you which one you like better. Are you more of a romantic or more of a realist? Because that's really what you have here. You have the romantic who believes that we can just go out and cast all our cares away and everything will be fine. Or in Raleigh's where he says no, we're going to live in this moment because this moment is all we have, and I'm not going to waste time on someone who's too foolish to understand that I have real needs as a real person. Okay, and again, you can see really how he's making fun of Marlowe with this. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I hope that you enjoyed these poems.